Hello, it's Monday, so welcome to another episode of Miller's Musings. This seems awfully far away from my face, so I'm just going to draw it back in. As I always do, quick little intro. If you only just stumbled across this, my name is Simon Miller. I do a weekly series, usually drops on a Monday, where we talk about life, anxiety, depression, happiness, sadness, and all the little things we all have to go through, but for some reason, we don't like talking about. So as I have a small platform, I thought, you know what, I'll talk about it. If people like it, they can watch. If they don't, they can call me an asshole on Twitter. It would make no difference. Now, this is a very difficult one to do. I mean, you would have seen the title of the video. I gave it the title. I gave it that title because I thought, why beat around the bushes? I won't lie. I didn't know it was Suicide Prevention Day until I woke up this morning and I saw a few things on Twitter. And it kind of presented somewhat of a dilemma to me because I never want to use this series. I want this series to get out to as many people as possible, 100%, because I think it's important to talk about it. And that would be, the more people talking about it, the more hopefully it does some good. That was the idea. But I don't ever want it to feel exploitative or anything like that because that's not what it's about. It's why I try not to plug anything during these things. I just try and keep it as transparent as possible because that's what it is, and I try and do it with all my content to the point where if I was ever advertised, I will tell you, and blah blah blah. But it seems slightly redundant to have something like this and not to talk about suicide on Suicide Prevention Day. It's almost missing the point, I feel like, because I mean, before we go anywhere, I should say this: any kind of feelings of that ilk or depression or sadness, anxiety, please talk to a friend, please talk to a loved one, go to a counsellor, talk to your GP. There's lines like Samaritans you can ring. I am not an authority in all of this. I am just someone who's very passionate about mental health. I have a small following and, I like to try and, I'm a positive dude and I like to try and channel things into positive and good things. So please do that. I mean, it's really, I think, of all the days to probably say something like this, there is nothing wrong feeling like that, and there's nothing wrong with reaching out for help. Reaching out for help doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a loser. It doesn't make you less of a human. If anything, understanding that you're having a problem and that you need someone else to help you or get you through it, that actually makes you really strong. Because asking for help takes strength. Same with crying, right? We talked about it on here before. Crying and being willing to show those emotions in public or in front of whoever takes strength. Because that is what strength is. It's easy. Let's take crying because that's a bit more, an easier thing to talk about. But it's easy. Not easy. It's never easy. But, to hide your tears because you're worried about what somebody else thinks of you is not as strong as being like, I don't care what that person thinks. I'm me. And I want to cry at this because my emotional gland has been hit and therefore I'm going to cry. That's strength. That's strength of character, especially when, I'm not saying you don't care about what other people think, but it doesn't bother you and it's not going to affect your overall being. So that is the number one thing I think we have to say in this episode is that, yes, if you have any kind of those thoughts or feelings, please do reach out for someone. Please do talk about it. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need some help. And there's nothing wrong with that. We all need help. We all need help every single day. Some days worse than others. Now, again, going back to the honesty thing, I've never dealt with suicide directly. Indirectly, there are a few little things that give me a better idea of it, but I'm not going to talk about them specifically because that's not what these videos are about. But again, I understand some people may not agree with. This is just something that I saw, and every time I talk about things like this, it's always a thing that comes to mind. And the sort of the most, I guess, poignant and powerful thing I ever saw about suicide was on the internet, and it was on a bridge, and it was done for to try and send a message. But it said something along the lines of suicide doesn't take the pain away. It just passes it on to somebody else. And I thought that was it moved me a little bit. It hit me clearly because it was ages ago and I still remember it. Now, it's not as simple as that because people that commit suicide aren't thinking that way. People that commit suicide feel like that's the only way out or that they have no worth or that nobody will care when they're not around anymore, which categorically isn't true for anybody. Everybody has worth. You just have to find it. And sometimes we lose our way. And it does feel that way, and we all handle that in different ways. It's bad regardless. Obviously, taking it to that level being what you could arguably say is the worst thing ever, because not only is it terrible for the person involved, I mean, purely from a sympathetic point of view, what a horrible thing to have to undertake or experience to the point you think, I got nothing left. Like, there's a song by Metallica called Fade to Black, which is about somebody writing a suicide note. And I heard that when I was a kid. And even then with the lyrics, I was in that headspace of, imagine feeling like that's all you've got. It must be horrendous and it must be horrible. And I feel lucky that I've never had to go through that myself. And I have nothing but, again, sympathy for anybody that does feel that way. And I think, that's, I'm not saying that I understand, but I am saying that, sort of mental health and anxiety, if it's really getting you down and it's really playing on your mind to that degree, absolutely you can kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together to understand, I, how somebody could get there. Because when you are anxious, when you are depressed, and when you are struggling, and maybe you haven't reached out for help, eventually it does get too much. Of course it gets too much, because we're not built to try and handle that, or walk through this life with that kind of burden on us constantly. We want to share that burden, and we want to get it off our chest, and we just want someone to look back at us and go, it's going to be okay, because it is going to be okay. It's just going to take a long time to get there. And again, going back to these videos, that is why they do them. Because a lot of people get in touch with me after them. I'm not saying I'm no kind of martyr. I'm no better or worse than anybody else. But it does mean a lot to me. I was at Starcast / All In, the wrestling conventions event a couple of weeks ago. And a few people came up to me and they'd watched these videos and they said it had really helped them through that day. And that meant more to me than anything anybody could ever say, because that is the whole point of why I do them. I certainly don't think, again, that I'm some magical person. One day we'll talk about it properly, but I'm just very, very aware of and respectful and passionate. That's the best word, passionate about people going through these struggles. Because you see it on the internet, especially all the time. People will say stuff and, kind of the reaction that people get, you're like, well, that's not really... It's even when someone, this is where it already ties in really, when someone does something wrong on the internet, it's quite clearly that it's wrong, or in their personal life or whatever, and it gets broadcast. They know they've done wrong, they hold their hands up and apologize. That doesn't mean they get off the hook. It still means there's a lesson to learn there. But then rather than try and use that lesson to educate and teach, what happens a lot of the time is that the shouting continues, and the onslaught of Twitter abuse, whatever you want to call it, continues, and then that gets that person down. And that's the kind of stuff I want to eradicate all of that. I don't want there to be kind of bullying, any kind of, you're going to get negativity here and there, of course, but I just want to get rid of that, because I feel like when that gets too much, and when somebody feels backed into a corner, that's when, stuff like suicide, maybe it starts to become an option. Like I read a thing I think it was the BBC or some news site the other day about like a kid, like an 8-year-old kid, maybe even younger, who killed themselves because of homophobic bullying at school. And that just, I don't think anybody can actually comprehend that apart from the family and and what they're going through, because nobody should be able to make you feel that way. If you're gay, good for you. If you're not gay, good for you. If you're, if you're going through some gender stuff, good for you. That's no one else's business but yours. And for somebody else to feel like they can, affect you in a bad way just because they don't understand it, there is never, ever, ever an excuse for that. Again, I don't think we should yell at that person. I think we should try and educate that person, because then it can go the other way. And even if you can look at someone and go, they're a bad person, well, then we should try and drag them up with the rest of us. We shouldn't try and push them down anymore, because ultimately, we want to get suicide rates to 0. We want everyone to be happy and skipping through fields with daisies. It's never going to happen, because it can't happen. However, though, like I say, I wake up, I saw it's Suicide Prevention Day. I know that it's Monday and I got to do a video like this. I'm like, well, you got to talk about it. It's not really very specific, this one, but I would never want to, offend or insult anybody that has either been in that position or maybe is in that position right now by trying to act like I know what you're going through, because I don't. I find it much like prejudice, really. I think you can only really understand. You can appreciate other people's prejudice, but you can't totally understand it unless you are the person in that group. I'm Jewish, for example. Shana Tova, if you're Jewish, it's this Jewish New Year today. I was in synagogue earlier. And again, you can probably understand Jewish persecution if you're Jewish. And that goes for many, many, many different things. Doesn't mean we can't all come together, to try and stop that. So yeah, I don't want to be coming across like that. But after a lot of thinking, I thought I was just going to talk about it. And whatever's going to come out of my mouth is going to come out of my mouth. But I haven't said anything that I disagree with or, or I regret. Maybe I'll watch it back and go, oh, shouldn't have said that. But I'll put it up anyway because, I don't like to call these ramblings or rants. I like to think they're more considered than that. But these are my thoughts around a subject that we've mentioned. More importantly, though, this was the main reason I wanted to do it. In case you stumble across this video on whatever day, was it September the 10th today? September the 9th? I've got a calendar here. September the 10th. I don't care if it's November the 4th, February 19th, or June the 1st. Whatever it is, if anything I've said can trigger something in your brain to reach out, I'm not saying to me, or you can reach out to me, but again, I'm sure there's much better people than me, friends, family, GP, this list goes on. Just reach out to them and tell somebody how you feel. There's no shame in saying, I've thought about killing myself. Because if that's how you're feeling, that's the, no one worries about saying I love you. No one worries about saying I miss you. No one worries about saying I don't feel good today. Well, there's more connotation around that. But ultimately, if that's how you're feeling, genuinely feeling to the point that you're having thoughts that you don't want or even considering actions that we don't want to see, then just tell somebody about it. And even if that, say you pull the wrong straw out of the hat and that person responds badly to you, that's on them. That's not on you. Clearly, you're going through some stuff. Clearly, you need help. And anyone that's not going to give you that help isn't worth your time. Go and find somebody that is. Please. That's what all this video is about. I've gone over 10 minutes now, so I'll wrap up. Again, that was quite a rambling, ranting one, to be fair. But that is what this series is all about. I want to, like I say, mostly 1,000 views? I'm not even concerned about it. Again, I'd love them to do more because it means more people will be watching and hopefully spreading the message. But it's more about having this conversation and showing that we don't have to be ashamed or worried to have this conversation. It's okay. It's okay. And as bad as you may feel now, eventually you won't feel as bad and you can climb back up the tree of goodness, something I've just made up. Right, we've gone over 11 minutes, so I'll stop talking. Thank you to everyone that watches these. Again, thank you to everyone that says kind words. It's funny, for views that don't do crazy YouTube numbers, I get more feedback on this, especially on Twitter, with people just sending me app messages than maybe any of my other videos. And that does mean a lot to me. There's nothing wrong with struggling mentally. And if anything, hopefully one day we all wake up and we do all feel better, because we know even if we don't feel better, we're accepted for that. And the plane can keep on flying, whatever that means. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, all that stuff. And I'll be back with you next Wednesday. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you soon.